Hello there, YouTubes. How are we all? I'm very well. Thank you for asking. Now, before I get into the main topic I'm going to actually be talking about here, I'll point out a small typo that was made in the title of this when I first put it out there, which was slightly amusing for me. Instead of putting attack on multiculturalism, the typo was I put attack of multiculturalism. Why are you beeping now, you fuck? My phone's annoying. Anyway, I've totally forgotten what I was going to say. Yeah, attack of, which is a complete 180 on like what the title would mean just by the changing of one letter. And also it brought to mind some sort of the attack of multiculturalism, like it was some sort of Godzilla creature, you know, multiculturalism laying waste to downtown Tokyo or some fucking nonsense. Yes, I'm a bit weird, people. And what of it? Had you not noticed? Lo, these many months. Anyway, yes, as the title to this, it's more of a reply than a response as such to my good friend and trusted comrade SJW101, his fantastic video on multiculturalism and the attack, on multiculturalism, which is linked below. You should go and check that video out and subscribe to it. You should check that video out at least in part because it's going to be way better than this rambling shite. Because I tried to put together as detailed, scripted sort of video as I could, but I kind of found every time I tried, I couldn't. The areas that are connected to multiculturalism are so diffuse that it's almost impossible to really get it down into a kind of concise enough time frame to really do it justice. Because you think about the things that are involved in, or are often end up being involved in discussions of multiculturalism, like immigration, assimilation, religion, Islamism, Islamophobia. In Britain, you've got things like the European Union involved in all of that, housing, all kinds of political stuff. I'm just, yeah, all of that. Anyway, so I'm just going to give you a sort of general overview of where I stand on it, and I'm not in a sense of balance, but where part of the discussion around multiculturalism has broken down, and it's partly because of the left. I would argue mostly because of people on the right. And I know the political spectrum isn't as simple as left versus right. Of course it isn't. But you're not watching this for like fucking advanced political theory lessons, okay? So we're just going to go with left and right because it's just fucking simpler. And this is YouTube. It's not. If you want academic debate, go into academia. That would be my take on that. Anyway, yes, I am a huge ardent supporter of multiculturalism. I don't think that will be a massive surprise to anybody, especially because I've said so publicly in the past. And of course, I'm a pinko lefty, fucking whatever you want to call me. But for me, it's the freedom to have one's own culture, even if you live in a country which is predominantly of some other culture, is one of the best expressions of. I'm going to try and ignore that. I don't know why it's doing that now. I bet that's one of my subscribers who knows me, who's playing a trick on me, specifically messaging me, knowing it's going to annoy me. I bet that's Sargon of Akkad. I bet it is. It isn't. I bet it isn't. Anyway, yeah, for me, multiculturalism is one of the greatest expressions of the sort of the freedom of individuality of the West, of Western civilization that we so proudly boast about. But yeah, we'll at least in rhetorical senses attack some of that freedom. And actually, SJW101 picked up on it in his video, the different models of multiculturalism that exist. And the one I despise the most is actually the French model. And one of the signs of why I hate it so much is the fact that the right in Britain, who I know to be largely francophobic because of their somewhat more socialist tendencies in terms of economic policy, absolutely love the French immigration model in terms of essentially forced assimilation, where you're forced to take on sort of predominant cultural ideas or whatever, and that for me is totally fucking wrong. That for me isn't really a free society. I mean, the most obvious example of that in the French system is the banning of the burqa, the Muslim head veil dress thing, which is utterly fucking disgusting as far as I can see. Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, for anyone out there that wants to spot a shite in the comment section, that I'm pro burqa or anything. But I am pro freedom, because you'll notice it's often those who call themselves anti-authoritarian or whatever who are the first to jump in and say the government must ban the wearing of the burqa or whatever. Yeah, which is like totally fucking draconian bullshit, because I wouldn't want the government to tell me what I can't wear in the same way that I wouldn't want them to tell me what I must wear, but the boundaries of, say, you have to have like your genitals covered, obviously, and you have to you can't have like ridiculously offensive slogans. But that comes with under sort of general decency rules. Outside of those specific examples, I don't want the government. It's not the government's fucking job, and indeed, it's not your job to say that this other person mustn't wear this garment. That for me goes completely against the idea of sort of the freedom of individuality within the Western world. Seems to me pretty fucking obvious that that's the case. It's not your job, and it's certainly not the government's job to define what other people want to wear. And that's one of many examples that are in the French model. I think in Britain we've got a pretty decent system where we don't really do that. We take on and assimilate via essentially adding them to the collection of cultures that we have here. And it doesn't always work perfectly, but I would argue actually it isn't multiculturalism that's the problem there. It's actually a failure of, well, not a failure of, but a kind of a consequence of having those freedoms, that you still have in-group preference, right? You still want to be around people like you, in essence. And that's never going to really go away, or certainly not for the foreseeable future, because that's some sort of hard-grained, like fucking evolutionary shit. That's some really fucking deep-rooted stuff. But you can't necessarily force people to live where they don't want to live. So you get sort of ghettoization in certain places, and that's where the problem comes. Because it seems to me, actual, genuine multiculturalism, where people are living around one another from different cultures, you essentially learn not to fear the other, the out-group people, because you realise that even though they might look different, like the colour of skin is the most obvious one, but there are other physical characteristics of different races. Fuck off. I'm actually just going to turn that off. Because that's really fucking annoying and distracting. Thrice they fucked me over now. What was I saying? I was in my flow. I've totally forgotten. Yeah, but when there are other physical characteristics as well, of course, that differ from race to race or whatever. And even though they might look different or pray to a different god or eat different foods or whatever, they're not to be feared. They're not scary. Yeah, they're just people going about their business, just like you and I and everyone else. They're not to be feared. It's when you get that kind of pockets of one group and the other group that you can get a kind of clash. But when they're actually mixed in all together, you don't really get that. By and large, it seems that people get on perfectly well because we're all fucking human beings. There's nothing massively different between a Muslim human being or a Christian human being or an atheist human being. We've all got wants and needs. We all, do our thing. There are very few of us that are actually, violent, mad extremists or whatever. So there's all that. And yeah, like I say, we do this thing where you've got, I love living in a city that, like Birmingham here in England, the second largest city in Great Britain, for those who don't know. And the birthplace, of course, of Ozzy Osbourne, most famously in recent times. And where J.J.R. Tolkien lived, going back a bit. Anyway, I'm not working for the tourist board, honest. I love the fact that it's an incredibly vibrant city. You got like the Chinese Quarter and the Irish Quarter, and you've got pockets of Polish centres within the city and all that sort of stuff. And you've got you've got the Balti Mile and the Balti Triangle. We've got two different areas designated in the city, or sprung up, autonomously, to do with the Balti, which, although it's actually a British dish, is a derivation of the traditional Indian curry. Because we're not a very healthy city, Birmingham. To reappropriate a Johansson joke, Birmingham's such a fat city that we have even the oxygen is deep fried in ghee. Anyway, yeah, but I like all of those cultures mixing together, and that for me it seems the fair and just way of going about that, because ultimately the discussion isn't whether we should or shouldn't have multiculturalism. It's here. It ain't fucking going nowhere. So what's the best way forward? What's the best way to deal with it? Would be the actual discussion. And now on to some of the problems that have arisen, it seems to me, in the discussion of it. Because actually, in terms of parliamentary politics, certainly here in Britain, both of the major parties, the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, have not discussed these kinds of issues very seriously in recent decades, for two different reasons. The Conservatives, because they don't want to appear to be the old racist, nasty party. They were literally called the nasty party, or they were literally called in the media that. And they don't want to appear that. They wanted to get away from that. And even though they're just as inherently racist as the kind of grassroots are, the mainstream politicians don't want to have that discussion. And the Labour Party don't want to have that discussion because they know that some of their views on these sorts of matters aren't very popular. So it's best just swept under the carpet, under the rug. And so actually, whenever you get a national discussion that stagnates to that degree, it's nothing good can come from that, it seems. But in terms of the general discussion, I think the left has abrogated its duty to protect these freedoms and to protect multiculturalism and to defend it, because the right aren't going to do that. They have no interest in doing that. So it's down to the left to do that. And all too often it seems that we've been too easy in essentially just throwing out terms like racism and xenophobia and whatever, to the point where the meaning, the strength of those words used to have has been diluted. And so essentially, whenever you say to a person, however rightly or wrongly, that they're a racist or a xenophobe or whatever, or indeed the old phrase, the little England, or whatever, it doesn't have the same power or weight as it used to. And so actually, you can't use it in the more pointed examples of when you need to, when someone actually is being a racist prick. And so what the left need to do, I think, is to have more nuanced and actually detailed discussions and breakdowns with people who aren't necessarily racist. They're generally fairly moderate, but they might be ignorant or just lacking certain knowledge or not up to date with stuff. And that's, I don't even mean that to mean they're stupid. They don't watch the news and stuff. Most people don't fucking watch the news, which is exactly what the political establishment want and love. But on the right, again, it's an example of the lazy argumentation, basically, that multiculturalism has been thrown into the pile with a lot of other their hateful buzzwords, which they spew out and then act as if they've won an argument. And it's the usual line about this political correctness gone mad, PC brigade, cultural Marxists, and multiculturalism and all this shit. And even on the far right, you get things like white genocide and anti-racist is code for anti-white, which is a particular favourite of mine because it's just so unbelievably stupid. Because especially when you break it down, that basically means, if that's true, that means that white equals racist. There you go. Which, by the way, I'm not saying that is true. I'm saying that if you subscribe to that, the logical extension is that white is racist, which is, rather ironic in its own way. Anyway, yeah, so that's how the right have totally scuppered and stifled any debate on this, because they don't want a debate on it, because ultimately they know that debate can't be won by them, because what the right have always done and what their whole thing is to essentially hold back the tide of progress, and they're not fucking going to. But they're not going to stop it. All they can ever do is halt it and slow it down. And stifling debate is a perfect way of doing that. So actually, the debate is something that needs to be had, and that's where SJW 101 put the call out, and that this is my reply to him. And I would ask or try and engage with people and say, if you interested in this kind of topic, either respond to me or to his video or whatever, and get involved in this discussion, because it's something that's actually rather important. Apologies for the slightly rambling way in which this video went. I hope it made some sense to some of you on some level. Go and check out SJW 101. He's the fucking shizzle, yo. See, I'm down with ethnic minorities, clearly. And yeah, thank you all for watching. I shall see you at some point in the future. Pip pip.